Ever get this feeling like your computer's keeping secrets, like a digital diary it doesn't want you to read?
Yeah.
Well, in the world of Linux, it absolutely is. And today, we're peeling back the curtain, revealing a hidden world of digital breadcrumbs and the folks who try to erase them.
It's like this. Every action, every single change, even the tiniest hiccup on your Linux system, it's all being recorded meticulously.
Okay, hold on, back up a sec. For those of us who haven't spent, like, years in the Linux trenches, what are we talking about here?
Imagine a super detailed history book. For your computer, it notes every time you logged in, every file, every time a program crashes. That's basically what Linux logs are, this treasure trove hidden in plain sight.
So it's like your computer's running a constant background check on itself. That's, I don't know, impressive and kind of creepy, right?
More common than you'd think. And in the Linux world, this meticulous record keeping, it's all thanks to something called syslogged. It's always running, always watching, always logging.
Syslog sounds so official. Like, is this our digital detective gathering evidence?
Exactly. And that's where our deep dive today comes in. We're using Linux basics for hackers to explore this back and forth between system security and, well, those who would rather their actions stay off the record.
Okay, so we've got our trusty Syslogged playing digital Sherlock Holmes. But what happens when Moriarty shows up?
That's where things get really interesting. Because while these logs are like a gold mine for understanding your system, they're also a roadmap for anyone trying to cover their tracks.
Because if you know where the logs are, you know where to erase the evidence.
Precisely. And that's a key tactic for hackers. Manipulating, deleting these logs to hide their activity. But first, to understand how they do it, we got to dig a little deeper into how these logs actually work.
Okay, let's unpack that. What makes these logs tick? Like, what's the secret ingredient?
The key is a file called rcslog.conf/. First RDV slave. Think of it as the rulebook for logging it. Defines what gets recorded, how, and where it's all stored.
So, like a customization menu for your computer's history book. You can tweak what gets written, how detailed it is.
Absolutely. This is where it gets really neat. You can tell the system, okay, be super detailed about this kind of thing, like security events. But keep things lighter on, say, routine system checks.
Okay, so instead of a fire hose of information, you can, like, fine-tune it to what matters most. Okay, that makes sense. But, gotta be honest, digging through a file like rcslog.conf sounds a little intimidating, full of code.
It can seem that way, but our source actually breaks down the basics in a way that's pretty digestible.
Okay.
It's like the simple recipe: facility.priority action.
Okay, facility.priority actionation. I'm listening.
So facility, that's like the category, the department of whatever's being logged.
Okay.
Think of it like filing paperwork. You've got kernel messages, you got mail system activity, user logins, all nice and organized.
So far, so good.
Priority, that's basically how important the info is. Like, is this a memo or a 5-alarm fire?
Gotcha. So the priority level is how seriously the system takes it.
You got it. It ranges from, like, debug. Yeah, it's your computer whispering about minor things, all the way up to critical, where it's hitting the panic button.
And then action, that tells the system what to actually do with that message, right? Like where to store it.
Exactly. It dictates how the system handles it. Does it write it to a file? Send an alert? This is where it gets really powerful because you can customize those actions based on, the facility and priority we talked about.
Okay, this is starting to make sense. But horn on, we're talking Linux here, right? Which is famous for loving cryptic codes, cryptic commands. Is rcslog.com just full of that stuff?
There are codes involved, yeah. But don't worry, our source has got us covered. Remember that decoder ring I mentioned?
Oh, yeah, the cheat sheet.
Exactly.
That's what we need to make sense of these logs.
Absolutely. This cheat sheet breaks down all those facility and priority codes.
Yeah.
So you can actually understand what's happening. For example, you see kern.crit. That's not some message from the Matrix.
Right.
It means there's a serious kernel issue, like time to call in the digital paramedics.
Yikes. Okay, yeah. I can see why having those codes would be pretty essential if you're serious about Linux security. But let's be honest. Even with a perfectly set up rcslog.con, all those events, they start to add up, right? We're talking gigabytes of data, maybe even terabytes, depending on the system. It's like having a digital hoarder living on your hard drive.
Right.
All those logs just piling up, taking up all that space.
Yeah, good analogy.
So what's a Linux user to do? Is there like a digital decluttering service?
There is actually, built right in. Remember our source, Linux Basics for Hackers?
Yeah.
It talks about this tool, Logrotate.
Logrotate, so it rotates logs. Self-explanatory.
Exactly. It manages those ever-growing log files.
Yeah.
Instead of letting your file cabinets overflow,
Hmm.
right, you archive the old stuff, move it to storage to make room. That's Loggertate, but digitally.
Okay, so it's like hitting compress on a giant zip file of old logs. But how often does this happen? Do I have to, like, set a reminder?
That's the best part. It's automatic. By
Mhm.
default, Loggertate does its thing every 4 weeks.
Yeah,
But you can adjust that, depending on your system, your storage.
got it. So Loggertate keeps things nice and tidy, but this is where things get a little more interesting, right? Especially when we're talking about, well, let's just say less than ethical users. What if you don't want those logs hanging around, even for a few weeks? What if you need them gone yesterday?
Ah, now you're thinking like a hacker. And you've hit on a major tactic log manipulation. Think about it. If those logs are a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to you, wouldn't you want to sweep them away? Especially if you're trying to hide something.
Right, of course. But wouldn't deleting those files look suspicious? I mean, suddenly, no logs. That's a bit of a red flag, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's why just hitting delete isn't enough. Hackers need to be sneakier. They need to really cover their tracks.
More thoroughly. Like, using some kind of, like, digital shredder.
Not a bad way to put it. Remember how we talked about deleting files? Doesn't actually erase the data, just makes the space, available to be overwritten.
Yeah, it's like erasing something written in pencil. You can still kind of see it if you look closely enough.
Exactly. That's where the shred command comes in. Think of it like a shredder, taking those log files, chopping them up, and scattering the pieces.
Okay, that's a pretty clear picture. So shred is about making those deleted logs what impossible to recover. How does it actually work?
Shred doesn't just delete, it overwrites the data multiple times with random characters, scrambling it. Our source even mentions a few overwrites might be normal, but a hacker who's really trying to hide, it might do 10, 20, even more.
Wow, thorough is an understatement. So
Okay.
you've shredded your logs, erased those digital footprints. Anything else a hacker might do to, like, vanish?
Just one more thing that's honestly a little chilling.
Yeah.
Imagine you're monitoring a system, everything seems fine, and then silence. The logs just stop.
Ooh, yeah, like the calm before the storm. That's ominous.
Exactly. That's sudden silence,
Uh-huh.
especially when it comes to logs. Huge red flag. Usually means someone was disabled the entire logging system.
So not just covering their tracks, but making the trail go cold.
Yep. Our source actually gives the command for disabling Cersei slogged, and it's not good. Requires root access, like the keys to the kingdom.
Root access, so that's like having the master password. Yeah.
Pretty much. If a hacker can disable logging, they're basically off the grid inside that system. It's a chilling thought, and it really drives home why knowing this stuff matters.
Wow, okay. So, for you listening, we've journeyed through the world of Linux logs. We've seen how these records can be so valuable, but also a target. We've explored how hackers can manipulate the rules, shred their digital breadcrumbs, even silence the system entirely. And that begs the question, what good are logs if no one is reading them? You gotta be vigilant. Knowing what to look for, what's missing, it can make all the difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, everyone, stay curious and stay secure.